Telstar 1 and its revolutionary impact on the world. Today, most people worldwide can easily watch the FIFA World Cup live as it happens from the comfort of their own homes. Or, people can watch the latest episode of their favorite series as soon as it's aired. But the last thing that the majority of people will think about is, who or what made this possible? I welcome you to the world of Telstar 1. Telstar 1's creation and launch were critical to the development of communicational technology and to the expansion of the frontier of transatlantic communication, because it introduced a whole new way to solve global problems by expanding knowledge and understanding between nations, and later set the path for more advanced satellites which have been and currently are working to make the world a better place. Telstar 1 was launched in July of 1962 and was funded and worked on by a collaboration between NASA, AT&T, British General Post Office, Bell Telephone Laboratories, as well as the French National Post. The key task and function of Telstar 1 were to receive signals sent to its location in space within the Earth's orbit, amplify them exponentially, and then transmit them to live audiences. Telstar 1 was a significant and critical icon in the world as it expanded the boundaries of global communications, leaving a significant impact on culture across the globe. It was composed of newly developed technologies of the time, such as the transistor and solar cells, in ways that were unheard of during the 1960s, resulting in the beginning of transatlantic communication services and the critical expansion of knowledge that paved the road for future satellites. The increasing necessity for a communications satellite and newly developed technology required for such an idea prior to the launch of Telstar 1 was a key part of its story. The invention of new and advanced technologies such as the television on September 7, 1927 began its consumer growth during the 1950s, causing the piqued interest in scientists for potential strides in these fields. The number of televisions in the US increased rapidly as it went from 6 million in 1950 to upwards of 60 million by 1960. Since demand for the television was so high, many people needed a quick way to broadcast the needed TV channels. These interests sparked the idea of a communication satellite that could effectively and efficiently fulfill television needs. Large technological advancements were made in fields such as solar energy and semiconductors during the 1950s. The development made by Bell Laboratories in 1954, known as the creation of the solar cell, was crucial to the making of the first functional communication satellite because they would be able to power all the equipment in the system. This invention eliminated a major obstacle for scientists and got them one step closer to the creation of Telstar 1. These advancements allowed this initial project to expand within the scientific community. Early on, during the design process of the satellite, scientists noticed that the material and technology needed for a communication satellite was scattered across many lines and fields of research. Technological components such as transistors were normally only used in computers at the time, but scientists took whatever they had available to them and adapted it to fit whatever their needs were. Telstar 1 was developed in a time of reform and modernization. Demand from the public ignited the fire for a communication satellite, and the new technological advancements of the time helped scientists overcome obstacles which they had to face in order to make Telstar 1. These new developments inspired many ideas and future satellites which would completely change our world. The Cold War, a conflict between the US and the Soviet Union which took place after the conclusion of World War II, was increasing tensions on both sides of the world. On the top of having to figure out how to go about with the Cold War, John F. Kennedy also had to think about what he would do in order to get the US ahead of the space race since Russia was winning during this time. The Soviet Union had already launched a human-piloted spacecraft known as Vostok 1. They had already sent the first artificial satellite into Earth's orbit known as Sputnik. Although it didn't have many capabilities or any communication features, it still got Russia ahead of the space race. For this exact reason, the need for Telstar 1 was greater than ever. The US needed something revolutionary in order to get them ahead of the space race. What better to do this than a space communication satellite with extraordinary abilities? President Kennedy was having a hard time being able to control the situations in the Cold War at the time, and more conflicts were arising because of the lack of communication. With this in the minds of everyone in the government, a scientist named John R. Pierce, the CEO of Nokia Bell Laboratories at the time, came to the government and proposed his ideas. He received funding for his ideas, and NASA would take care of the launch for Bell Labs. As the future lead developer of Telstar 1 in the video, Development of Telstar, published by Nokia Bell Labs, he speaks of the conditions and events which led him to voice his ideas of a communication satellite.
It was only when the Russian satellite Sputnik went up late in 1957 and the first American satellite early the next year that I began to stir around and push for the launching of an American communication satellite.
Telstar 1 had a lot of impact on the world, whether it was innovative or political. John Pierce knew that the government would fund his project because it would also contribute to the space race. The US would be able to get on par with the Soviet Union and would be able to have a chance of winning against them. The combination of newly invented technologies like the solar cell and the transistor, mixed with the political environment of the early 1960s, led to the successful build and launching of Telstar 1. It was sent into orbit on July 20th, 1962 in a Thor Delta rocket which was provided by NASA, and it transmitted the first transatlantic broadcast in world history to radio stations in England, France, and other countries from across the Atlantic Ocean. The CBS program was relayed by Telstar. It premiered in 16 countries. The show was watched by over 700 million people across the Atlantic. Along with television broadcasting abilities, Telstar 1 had the ability to transmit different white and black TV channels and maintain 600 calls simultaneously. Its technological outreach connected people across the world and allowed for interglobal communication. John F. Kennedy spoke publicly about Telstar 1 in the first formal broadcast exchange, which was relayed by Telstar 1, and here's what he said.
And this is another indication of the extraordinary world in which we live. This satellite must be high enough to carry messages from both sides of the world, which is, of course, a very essential requirement for peace. And I think this understanding, which will inevitably come from the speedier communications, is bound to increase the well-being and security of all people, here and those across the oceans.
The technological and political boundaries which Telstar 1 was able to break through left many long-term impacts on the world. While many were good, it also raised a lot of political questions about who should have control on what media should be broadcasted or posted. Congress decided that they were going to have two separate transmitting groups or companies, one for governmental broadcasting and one for the public. These companies continue to fulfill their jobs to this date by continuously repairing and building more satellites to keep the world connected. Telstar 1 helped expand knowledge between transatlantic countries by allowing for more communication between them, which has helped avoid unnecessary and major conflicts. Telstar 1 fulfilled its purpose in orbit for several months until it eventually malfunctioned and its transmitter failed due to collision of the satellite and high levels of radiation residue left by a nuclear test known as Starfish Prime, which was conducted by the US. Not only did Telstar 1 transmit and help to broadcast signals throughout the Earth during its time in commission, but it was also able to give scientists and researchers a lot more knowledge about space exploration. It helped scientists determine space's effect on specific technological components and other information about the Van Allen belt, like its effect on artificial satellites within the Earth's orbit. With this new experience and knowledge provided by Telstar 1, scientists of the time changed and improved their methods for the creation of future space technology which we use today. The Telstar 1 satellite was crucial to the development of advanced communication technology and to the development of the world. It was born in a time of political unease as the Cold War was increasing tensions between the US and the Soviet Union, especially in the space race. Telstar 1 became the solution to the lack of global communication and was the way to expand human horizons in space. The expansion of the frontier of transatlantic communication by Telstar 1 was a vastly important step taken in the space race, allowing for the next step of progress in the communication frontier.